December 5, 1945. 5 U.S. Navy torpedo bombers, known as Flight 19, took off from Fort Lauderdale, Florida, for a routine training mission over the Atlantic. 14 experienced airmen, led by Lieutenant Charles Taylor, soared into a clear afternoon sky. It was supposed to be a simple 3-hour exercise, a triangular route they had flown countless times. But on this day, they were flying straight into the heart of one of history's greatest aviation mysteries. An hour and a half into the flight, something went terribly wrong. The first sign of trouble crackled over the radio. It was Lieutenant Taylor, an experienced pilot, but his voice was laced with confusion. "Both my compasses are out," he reported, "and I'm trying to find Fort Lauderdale. I'm up in the air, but it's a mess. I'm sure I'm in the Keys, but I don't know how far down." This was strange. The Florida Keys are southwest of the base. Their flight plan was entirely over the ocean to the east. Back at the control tower, operators were baffled. They could see on their radar that Flight 19 was nowhere near the Keys. They were east of the Florida Peninsula, exactly where they were supposed to be, but somehow they were utterly lost. The radio operators tried to guide them back. "If you're in the Keys," they advised, "fly north." Taylor, however, was convinced he was over the Gulf of Mexico. This single, critical misjudgment would seal their fate. Instead of turning west toward the safety of the mainland, Taylor led his squadron further east, deeper into the vast, unforgiving expanse of the Atlantic Ocean. The other pilots in Flight 19 could be heard on the radio, their voices growing more anxious. "If we would just fly west," one of them suggested, "we would get home." But military protocol was strict. They had to follow their commander's orders. Taylor, disoriented and trusting his faulty instincts over his instruments, insisted they fly east. As the afternoon wore on, the weather began to turn. The clear skies gave way to churning clouds and rough seas. Fuel was running critically low. The radio transmissions became weaker, more frantic, filled with static and desperation. Taylor was heard giving a chilling order: "All planes close up tight. When the first plane drops below 10 gallons, we all go down together." It was a pact of solidarity in the face of the inevitable. They would face their end as a team. The last message ever heard from Flight 19 was faint, garbled, and haunting. Then there was only silence. The 5 planes and 14 men had vanished from the sky, swallowed by the ocean. But the tragedy didn't end there. Back on land, a massive search and rescue operation was immediately launched. As dusk fell, a PBM Mariner flying boat, a giant aircraft designed for sea rescue, took off with a crew of 13 men. This was Martin Mariner Bureau number 59225, searching for Flight 19. That's the mission. The Mariner, often nicknamed the Flying Gas Tank because of the large amount of fuel it carried, was a workhorse of the Navy. This particular crew was eager to help, to bring their fellow servicemen home. They radioed in their position shortly after takeoff, heading towards Flight 19's last known location. But then, something just as baffling and terrifying happened. 20 minutes after its last transmission, the rescue plane also disappeared from radar. A ship in the area, the SS Gaines Mills, reported seeing a massive explosion in the sky at the exact time and location where the Mariner would have been. The captain described a burst of flames that shot 100 feet into the air and burned for 10 minutes. When the ship raced to the scene, all they found was a wide oil slick and debris floating on the choppy water. There were no survivors. The Martin Mariner, the rescuer, had met a catastrophic fate while searching for the lost. 13 more men were gone, bringing the total to 27 lives lost in a single evening. The search for Flight 19 and the missing Mariner was one of the largest in naval history. Hundreds of ships and planes scoured over 300,000 square miles of ocean. For days, they searched, hoping for a miracle, for any sign of survivors or wreckage. They found nothing, not a single piece of debris from the 5 torpedo bombers, not one life raft, not one body. It was as if they had been erased from existence. In the official Navy report, the cause was listed as unknown. The lead investigator was baffled, famously stating that it was as if they had flown to Mars. This void of information created the perfect breeding ground for speculation, and it was this incident, more than any other, that cemented the legend of the Bermuda Triangle. The term Bermuda Triangle wasn't even coined until years later, But the story of Flight 19 became its cornerstone. People needed an explanation for something so inexplicable. Theories ranged from the plausible to the fantastic. Could it have been a sudden, violent storm that overwhelmed the planes? The weather did worsen, but was it enough to take down 5 military aircraft and a giant flying boat almost simultaneously? What about equipment failure? Taylor's compasses were clearly malfunctioning, but what about the other 4 planes? It's highly unlikely all of them would fail at the same time. The Mariner's explosion was likely caused by a fuel vapor leak igniting, a known risk with that aircraft model, but it still added another layer of tragedy to the mystery. Then there are the more exotic theories. Some people believe they were victims of a time warp or a spatial anomaly, a sort of invisible hole in the sky. Others pointed to extraterrestrial involvement, suggesting the planes were abducted by UFO. These ideas, while exciting, have no evidence to support them. The most likely explanation is a tragic cascade of human error, compounded by equipment failure and deteriorating weather. Lieutenant Taylor, despite his experience, became disoriented. He made a critical navigational error, and due to his authority as flight leader, the other pilots followed him to their doom. They likely ran out of fuel and ditched their planes in the violent high seas of the Atlantic. The Gulf Stream is an incredibly powerful ocean current in that area. It's very possible that any wreckage was quickly dispersed and carried far away, or sank to the ocean floor, which in that region is one of the deepest in the world. Finding small pieces of a plane in such a vast and deep expanse of water is like finding a needle in a haystack, a nearly impossible task, even with today's technology. Over the years, there have been several false alarms. Wreckages discovered on the seafloor were initially thought to be the lost Squadron, but were later identified as other aircraft. The mystery endures because the key piece of evidence, the planes themselves, has never been found. The story of Flight 19 is a powerful reminder of how quickly things can go wrong. Even for the most experienced professionals, it's a tale of confusion, a fatal mistake, and a rescue mission that ended in its own disaster. 27 men went out to serve their country and never came home, leaving behind families and questions that have echoed for decades. While the Bermuda Triangle might be a myth, the tragedy of Flight 19 is very real. It's a chilling piece of aviation history that continues to capture our imagination, a perfect storm of circumstances that led to one of the most enduring mysteries of the 20th century. What do you think happened to the lost Squadron? Let me know your theories in the comments below. Thanks for watching. If this case left you with more questions than answers, hit the like button and subscribe to join our search for the truth. There are many more stories waiting to be told, only here on Forgotten Clues.